say that corruption is worse in that country. But for the ranking, if the country is like, so 180 countries were ranked this year, right? And so if you are like 150 or 140, that means these are like worst countries. Then the CPI is the scale, like I said, 0 to 100, where 0 is highly corrupt and 100 is very good. Because of updates in the methodology, the CPI scores before 2012 are not comparable over time. The European Joint Research Center undertook an independent audit of the CPI in 2017 and its methodology. The same audit was conducted in 2012 following the introduction of a new methodology for the CPI calculation. Both audits found that the CPI is conceptually and statistically coherent and has a balanced structure. Okay, so like I said, 10 sources analyze Nigeria. These are the sources for Nigeria this year, 2025. We have the African Development Bank Country Policy and Institutional Assessments. We have Bertelsmann Foundation Transformation Index. We have Economist Intelligence Unit Country Ratings. We have Global Insight Country Risk Ratings. IMD World Competitiveness Yearbook. PRS International Country Risk Guide. Varieties of Democracy Projects. World Bank Country Policy and Institutional Assessment. World Economic Forum Executive Opinion Survey. World Justice Project Rule of Law Index. These are the 10 sources for Nigeria 2025 Then, now the CPI source data captures the following aspects of corruption, like I mentioned, based on the specific questions what they use to collect the data. So sometimes there are questionnaires that these sources use to provide the data. Now these are the areas that cover bribery, diversion of public funds, prevalence of officials using public office for private gain without facing consequences, ability of governments to contain corruption and enforce effective integrity mechanisms in the public sector, red tape and excessive bureaucratic burden which may increase opportunities for corruption, meritocratic versus nepotistic appointments in civil service, effective criminal prosecution for corrupt officials, adequate laws on financial disclosure and conflict of interest prevention for public officials, legal protection for whistleblowers, journalists, investigators when they are reporting cases of bribery and corruption, state capture by narrow vested interests, access of civil society to information and public affairs. So you can all see that all these are public sector issues, and administrative issues. And so this is what the survey looks at. So whatever results come out from this government perception, this was where they focused on when they were doing their analysis and their research and providing the data. How effective is Nigeria's criminal prosecution of corrupt officials? Do we have adequate laws for financial disclosure and conflict of interest prevention for public officials? How many high-profile political office holders have been successfully convicted? Prosecuted and convicted. What is the level of bribery in our public sector, whether it's the borders, whether it's in our public offices, whether it's the contracts and all of those, in the interaction with public officers and our public institutions, what is the level of bribery, the level of public funds, by our public institutions, what is the level, how is the prevalence of officials, within Nigeria, public officers, how is the level of diversion of public funds for private? All these are some of the issues that we look at. State capture, also, what is the level of protection in Nigeria for whistleblowers, for journalists, for investigators who go on the field, to bring out some of these very, very serious things and expose them. Access of civil society to information on public affairs. We have a Freedom of Information Act. How many of us have been able to effectively get information from our public institutions? These are some of the things that are analyzed. Then CPI source data does not capture the following aspects of the problem. So we talked about the aspect that it captures. So these are the aspects that the CPI does not capture. So there's no analysis on this. So, number one, the citizens' perception of experience of corruption. Two, tax fraud, illicit financial flows, enablers of corruption, e.g. lawyers, accountants, financial advisors, etc. Money laundering, private sector corruption, informal economy and markets. So these areas are not captured by the corruption perception index. Now, the methodology, like I said, the CPI is calculated using the following steps. Each data source that is used to construct the CPI must fulfill the following criteria before it qualifies to be a valid source. It must quantify perceptions of corruption in the public sector, be based on a reliable and valid methodology, which scores and ranks multiple countries on the same scale, performed by a credible institution. It must allow for sufficient variation of scores to distinguish between countries. It must give rating to a substantial number of countries. The rating is given by a country expert or business person. The institution repeats its assessment at least every 2 years. 2. Standardized data sources to a scale 0 to 100, where 0 equals the highest level of perceived corruption and 100 equals the lowest level of perceived corruption. This standardization is done by subtracting the mean of each source in baseline year from each country score, and then divided by the standard deviation of that source in the baseline year, and then the average is calculated. That's how we come across for each country. Now, this is the big review. This is Nigeria's CPI score for 2025. Let me come here. So, in 2024, we scored 26. I remember I said 26 over 100, that's 4, right? And in 2025, there's no change, meaning that we have been stagnant. We are still scoring 26. So, change is not the end of 2025. You can see 0, no change. We are still in 26. Then the ranking, 180 countries were ranked, and Nigeria came 142 in 2025 against the 140 that we ranked in 2024, meaning that we have gone back with two points. So we have declined actually. We have declined because in 2023 Nigeria was 145. There was a slight improvement in 2024. We dropped to 140. But you can see that we have gone back again to 142, meaning that we have declined by 2 points. And you know, our score, we are stagnant. We are still in 26 over 100. And then there are 180 students in the class, and we are 142. So that's the CPI score for 2025. Okay, so this is just a graph that we did to show the progression of Nigeria from 2016, how we have been moving, so that we're able to. Our score is 26 and our 140 for previous years, showing a decline 2 points, showing a decline 2 points. Thank you. I don't think there are any before we go. the executive director of fiscal transparency and public integrity. Center for Fiscal Transparency and Public Integrity. We also have a representative, Ms. Wala Shadi from SERAT. We have a representative Blessing from Accountability Lab. And then we have Ms. Atijani from Transition Monitoring Group. Are you ready to start?
Thank you very much. And let me express our apology for also the program had already started, but I was told that so our apology for this start. Let me once again thank our partners to be part of this process. Fight against corruption is not become like one organization or one person. It must be a collective effort because corruption has terribly undermined development and stability in our country. As you can see very well with the consequences of corruption has brought us to where we are as a country. Actually, no electricity, no peace. Many communities cannot sleep, cannot move around. Just last week, we saw how many people have been killed in various parts of the country. We cannot continue to go this way, and part of the reason is because there's corruption in the system. The security sector is run by a lot of corrupt practices. Nigerians are not able to have sound education. They are not able to have the education that is at least an average. Let's talk about the healthcare system. People with so many other things. And these are all critical of corruption. That is why we have to work as collective to make sure that we contribute in any way that we can do to reduce corruption in our country. So today, as usual, Transparency International, through the Nigerian chapter, which is Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLA, is releasing 2025 Corruption Perception Index for as CPI. Nigeria performance under the year review is something that we should all be concerned and worried. However, we believe that the contribution and the efforts that the various anti-corruption agencies are doing is also helping to mitigate some of these problems. So the index revealed that in 2025, Nigeria scored 26 out of 100, retaining a score of 26 from the last year. On the global country ranking, Nigeria declined from 140 in 2024 to 142 in 2025. This reflects a stagnation in Nigeria's anti-corruption effort, despite effort by anti-corruption agencies and other well-meaning Nigerians. This results show that there is a lot to be done to strengthen anti-corruption in Nigeria. You will agree with me with all the cases going on in this country. People should not be surprised at our position. If you see the corruption that is going on at local, state, and national level, one will not be surprised that we are becoming like a stagnated country with corruption. But this is possible it's possible to overcome this if we can collectively and with all honesty and sincerity, both as government, non-state actors, work together to defeat corruption. It's possible to do that. Although the index does not document specific instances of corruption with Transparency International independent, reputable, employed across the CPI is of considerable significance as government, private sector entities, civil society organizations, and other stakeholders rely on it to inform policy and strategic direction. So what we see in other countries, if some countries they have challenges, improving their corruption situation, this index helps them to address it. It's not to antagonize or to attack or to abuse. If you are honest and sincere and you are determined to fight corruption, if somebody observes that there are challenges in the way and manner in which corruption is happening or governance is happening in the country, you should listen, because that organization or that group of people are only advising you to improve, not criticizing you or attacking you. So in civil society, we are not politicians. We don't attack, we don't abuse, we only want to strengthen the system to work for our country. So some people in government who benefit from corruption may even come after us, after revealing this, because they don't want the system to improve, they don't want the system to be corrected. But if you are honest and sincere, and you have also, been in tune with what is going on in the country, if organization pointed out that there are challenges and there's need for you to address those challenges, are even providing you with some recommendation, some suggestion, you should actually see reason for that, to address that. If you care about the country image, if you care about the people, if you care about your own position in government. But we know some people that don't really care about this country. They are interested to continue to create misery and difficulty for many Nigerians. That is why they will not bother to address issues of corruption at local, state, and national level. However, we know that there are so many Nigerian patriotic Nigerian government officials and different arm of government that are working day and night to also support efforts to strengthen and ensure that we block these issues. Terms of corruption. Consequently, CISLAC has identified key areas to explain Nigeria's current performance on the corruption perception index. So one of it, we noticed that the improvement on the assets recovery efforts is helping to create good perception for many Nigerians. Demonstrating significant progress, Nigeria's effort to recover and repatriate foreign assets reflect growing international cooperation and strengthen domestic enforcement. Over the course of 2025, domestic anti-corruption agencies made significant recoveries. The Economic and Financial Crime Commission (EFCC) announced that it had recovered over 566 billion, approximately 114 million US dollars, along with 1,502 properties between October 2023 and September 2025, demonstrating sustained progress in combating illicit financial flows and reclaiming public resources. Additionally, the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission (ICPC) reported the recovery of 37.44 billion and 353 million US dollars in 2025 through Caesar and Okucha as part of its enforcement activities. On the international front, in January 2026, the UK Crown Dependency of JC signed to repatriate more than 9.5 million US dollars in assets linked to corruption to the Federal Republic of Nigeria, with the plans to be applied to crucial infrastructure projects such as Abuja Kano Road. These measures underline Nigeria's commitment to claiming holistic wealth, but as noted in our recommendation below, there are remains an urgent imperative to ensure the transparent and effective management of recovered assets to the benefit of Nigerian people. Strength number 2. Nigerian exit from the Financial Task Force is a gray area for us. After being placed on the FATF gray list due to some deficiencies in financial monitoring system, Nigeria was officially removed in October 2025 following 3 years of intense monitoring. The country successfully implemented a 19-point action plan to address identified gaps. This listing reflects measurable progress in strengthening anti-corruption, monitoring anti-money laundering, and countering the financing of terrorism. And this is a good signal. It's a great, relief for the country to have attained this. Let me say that Nigeria can do a lot, can do more to block leakages. The illicit financial outflow in the country is scandalous. We cannot, in the midst of poverty, be hearing these billions being taken out of Nigeria when communities, no light, no road, no water, no healthcare facilities. In fact, actually, every community is suffering from vicious attack by criminals, and yet these billions of dollars are taken out. It's an act of wickedness, it's an act of lack of fear of God, and that Nigerians will need to do everything possible to support the sincere effort of government to block and prevent this illicit, money laundering that is happening to our country. So, strength number 3, civil society organization and media advocacy has helped in terms of ensuring investigative journalism and civil society such as CISLA, CDD, quite a number of civil society organizations working to ensure that we, expose corruption with the work or with the support of the media is helping to create conducive atmosphere for civil society and the media to be amplifying the call for government to be responsive and responsible, and for the due process and rule of law to apply in Nigeria. Through their complimentary effort, they consistently draw attention to the issues that undermine national interest, thereby promoting governmental responsiveness. Nigeria acknowledges and commends this contribution and encourages stakeholders within this constituency to sustain this constructive engagement that civil society are doing. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now ask my colleague to look at some of the major cases that we have that created condition and perception for this corruption perception index report in Nigeria.
Okay. Thinking of where there are about 7 weaknesses, and the first one is judicial corruption. Modern and policy remains persistent challenges in Nigeria's judiciary. Even the Chief Justice of Nigeria has acknowledged the allegations of bias and undue influence, noting the impact on public confidence. The Nigerian Bar Association has also condemned judicial corruption, warning that it threatens democracy and social justice. There has been warnings against this threat to democracy and allegations of nepotism and nepotism in judicial appointments which are favored candidates with political connections or family ties over marriage. The second weakness is the legislature, and it's important to say the legislature is at the national level and at the substantial level, where over the years there have been consistent allegations of bribery involving lawmakers, and with the Premium Times reported in January 2025 that federal lawmakers have set up a bribery scheme targeting federal universities and other institutions. Lawmakers were using intimidation and threats to force heads of universities to pay 8 million naira each, 1 million each to the Senate and House committees to approve their applications by 2025 budgets. The investigation revealed that the extortion scheme involves senators and members of the House of Representatives. In August 2025, allegations of lawmakers have to pay bribes to 1 million to 3 million in order to present motions, bills, and petitions before the floor of the House of Representatives. The whistleblower was Honorable Ibrahim Usman Auyo, APC Jigawa State. The amount these bribes can have generated on the National Assembly are shameful and detrimental to the Nigerian image everywhere. Weakness number 3 is oil theft and subsidy fraud. Oil theft and subsidy fraud continue to exert a heavy toll on Nigeria's revenue, with consistent losses and limited accountability in the sector. According to the 2020 audited report by the Auditor General of the Federation, on 9 September 2025, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited failed to account for 22 billion naira, $49 million, 14 million pounds, and 5.2 million euros in oil-related costs, raising concerns about possible diversion of misappropriation. The audit detailed weak internal controls and numerous questionable transactions, including payments for abandoned or unimplemented projects and irregular contract expenditures. These findings underscore deep-seated financial mismanagement and lack of transparency in the oil and gas sector. Weakness number 3, weakening of opposition parties. Political corruption and the weakening of democratic plurality has become increasingly silent in Nigeria as a fundamental approach to the general election. Observers and civil society voices have expressed concern over rising inflation, suggesting that political incentives, populist and perceived pressure, rather than ideological alignment, are driving the alignment and further eroding opposition effectiveness. The National Assembly of recent rejected the proposed amendment to Clause 60 subsection 3 of the Electoral Amendment Act, which sought to make the electronic transmission of elections results mandatory in Nigeria. This is a setback to Nigeria's democratic development and a direct outrage to the collective will of Nigerians who have consistently demanded stronger, more transparent, and credible electoral legal framework. It also raises serious questions about the Senate's commitment to generate electoral reforms. So I have just read out the 3 weaknesses and I'll hand over to the chair to the next person that will read other weaknesses.
Good morning, everyone. Sometimes we keep hearing these videos, but I think that we are almost desensitized to these videos. The billions, the dollars that are just flying around. But as our brother was speaking earlier about some of the strengths that we've experienced, especially with the civil society organization and the media. I think it's important that we remind ourselves of the very important work that we do. Don't get tired, because it can get tiring, considering how the fight against corruption seems to happen. But I'll just speak on weakness number 4 and some other weaknesses. Corruption in the power sector. So despite substantial investment and an increase in the cost of electricity tariffs, Band A, Band C, Nigeria's electricity production has not improved. The national grid experiencing continuous collapse due to corruption-driven inefficiencies in procurement and oversight. The Auditor General's report published in 2025 revealed the alleged misappropriation of 128 billion by the Ministry of Power and the Nigerian Work and Electricity and Trade PLC. That's evidence. It is 128 billion. Imagine what that can do to electricity today in Nigeria. 128 billion. And it's important to note that when you break down the 128 billion, according to the most recent general report, and that's 2022 general report, it says that 33 million of that amount was used for troubles, unapproved troubles. Yes, it can be funny, right? But again, you go home and then you don't like 95 billion of that amount was spent on contracts and contractors without evidence. No trace of payments, no evidence of payments, no contracts made. 95 million. 39 million of that amount was spent on video conferencing for the NBED. So I can imagine for them to be able to communicate with other partners and all that. But as we speak now, if you go to NBED office, 33 billion is not there. 33 million, sorry, is not there. Video conferencing is not there. That's a lot of breakdown in the general review in the power sector. Witness number 5, shrinking civic space and democratic difference. Government suppression of civic engagement continues to intensify, marked by escalating crackdown on journalists, activists, and whistleblowers exposing corruption. Security agencies and political actors increasingly exploit repressive laws, including the Cybercrime Act, as well as strategic lawsuits against public participation slaps, to silence critical voices in the media and civil society. Press freedom remains under severe threats, and state-sponsored intimidation of civil society organizations undermine democratic accountability, creating conditions in which corruption can thrive. In 2025, it was reported that there were 86 documented incidents of attack against journalists and media organizations. This is 86 that were documented. And you can imagine how many were undocumented, how many people disappeared quietly because they were speaking against corruption. Witness number 6, corruption in the security sector. Persistent corruption and wasteful expenditure in Nigeria's security sector continues to undermine the effectiveness of government responses to the escalating security crisis, including insurgency, banditry, and communal violence across the country. The trend of politicians and politically exposed individuals exploiting security agencies for personal or partisan gain, while vast segments of the population remain unprotected, exacerbating insecurity and erodes public trust. Without urgent reforms to secure accountability, transparency, and strategic deployment of resources, increased funding alone will fail to contain Nigeria's multifaceted security challenges. It's important to note that every year, about 400 billion is budgeted for security goods in Nigeria. 400 billion. Some states have about 140 billion. About 10 states probably get about 140 billion for security. And I remember, I think it was last week, Sarah had sent different information request to ask, how have you spent? Like Oga was saying earlier, they're actually doing the job. I think there's an opportunity to even talk about the job. But then you send FOI requests and they don't get a response. Sarah is in court as usual, and the case has been adjourned to the 30th of March for hearing. And I think it's something that we need to also keep our ears on the ground. Witness number 7. Procurement fraud and budgetary and corruption. Concern has risen over the recent constitutional breaches in the repeal and reenactment of the 2024 and 2025 Appropriations Act, carried out by a collaboration between the President and the National Assembly. The opacity, lack of transparency, and popular participation in the budgeting processes, to the extent that 18 days after the presentation of the Federal Legislative Budget, the Budget Office of the Federal and National Assembly failed and refused, neglected to upload same on their website. Really concerning. Furthermore, the 2024 and 2025 Appropriation Act bills, which have been approved by the National Assembly, are not available to Nigerians or any electronic portal. And we wonder why we're stagnant, because we always say that the two legs upon which corruption can be fought transparency and accountability. So we're not proactively transparent. It's no wonder we are still holding the fight against corruption. In 2025, budget made a staggering revelation about the budgetary process, which has shaken public confidence in Nigeria's budgetary process. It was uncovered that a staggering 6.93 trillion naira worth of questionable projects had been inserted into the 2025 national budget by the National Assembly. Weakness number 8, opaqueness of public institutions. Many public institutions in Nigeria have yet to fully comply with the FY Act 2011, the Open Government Partnership and other international transparency commitments, to which the country is a signatory. Critical information on contracts in the oil and gas, infrastructure and social protection sectors, among others, remain largely inaccessible to the public. Anti-corruption agencies must provide comprehensive data on the arrest, investigation, prosecution, and recovered proceeds of crime in accordance with the Proceeds of Crimes Act 2022. Furthermore, the disposal of assets by anti-graft agencies should be conducted transparently to prevent allegations of misconduct and ensure public confidence in their operations. I'm going to my colleague to take us through the presentation.
So while colleagues were speaking, I was just asking myself, what is so difficult about good governance? Is it rocket science? So just talk about the recommendations now. And the first is that they must ensure that agencies such as the EFCC, ICPC, and the NFI will operate independently, free from political interference, and are adequately funded. They must also implement strict and fair trials for corruption cases and enact laws that enhance transparency and accountability. The second recommendation is that they must establish a robust intelligence monitoring mechanism within the judiciary, including whistleblowing channels, mandatory assets disclosure, and conflict of interest protocols. The processes for judicial appointments and promotions should be fully transparent. And the number 3, we must also prioritize impartial and unhindered investigations into corruption within the security sector to address Nigeria's deteriorating security situation. Security agencies and operatives must not be used as instruments of politically motivated vendettas. Recommendation number 4, and for me, I think this is very timely. We must introduce robust tracking systems for oil production and sales, ensuring that the NNPC accounts for the alleged missing funds as highlighted in the General Report of 2022, published in 2025. Additionally, the government should ensure the effective implementation of the Public Procurement Act 2017, mandating full digitization and public access to all government contracts, budget, allocation, and procurement processes. Now, I think this is very timely because I don't know how many of us have seen the trendy interview where someone reviewed missing 210 trillion naira by the same NNPC. And while I watched that video, I just imagined the yearly budget that is being made every year for communities in the Niger Delta region like Djibouti. And from our work, Accountability Lab will be working with 9 communities across the Niger Delta region. And we can say for a fact that if you live in those regions, your life expectancy is within the ages of 54 and 55. And this is as a result of the operations of companies like enemies. So that's why I said this is very timely. People are dying every day, right? Because funds that are meant for remediation projects have not been used effectively. And then 210 trillion naira is missing. Nobody's taking anything. So again, this is a very timely recommendation. And then
the fifth recommendation says that anti-corruption agencies mandated under the Proceeds of Crime Recovery and Management Act 2022 should establish publicly accessible databases detailing assets in their custody in line with the Act and the proactive provisions of the Freedom of Information Act 2011. Ensure that high-profile corruption cases are pursued to their logical conclusion, safeguarding national interests, explore international avenues for addressing transnational grand corruption cases where applicable. So I'll just hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, so in listening to the several recommendations, I think most of these recommendations are in line with the responsibilities of those public office holders contained in the Constitution. So we realize that most of these things that are even their responsibility, they still shy away from it because of the loopholes that these things create for them to engage in corrupt practices. So in further to what my colleague has said earlier, another recommendation is to provide an enabling environment that protects citizens' right to protest and express satisfaction or dissatisfaction with the governance process, thereby reinforcing government accountability. We more see the challenges that people face these days when it comes to protest. Government looks for ways to try to shrink the voices of protesters, but even creating or funding government pro-government protest groups that will go into conflict with those that are actually protesting for the rights or in demanding for good governance. That is actually very ridiculous because we can't see a process whereby we have Nigerians protesting for things to get better and government is funding other protest groups to come and also say that they are comfortable with the current situation. So another one is the National Assembly should prioritize the passage of the whistleblowing blower protection bill to safeguard individuals exposing corruption and upholding fundamental freedom of expression. Investigative journalism, civil society organizations such as CISLAC and active citizens play a critical role in exposing corruption and holding the government accountable. Their combined efforts strengthen Nigerians' democracy by consistently highlighting issues that undermine the national interest and continued engagement from these constituencies. The National Assembly also should ensure that no expenditure occurs without proper appropriation and fully comply with constitutional provisions limiting spending to amount appropriated by law. These things are there already. It is their responsibility. It should also publish the 2026 federal budget estimates and the 2024 and 2025 application acts repeal and reenactment on the website of the Budget Office of the Federation and the National Assembly to promote transparency and public accountability. And finally, the National Assembly should amend the Electoral Act to mandate the electronic transmission of election results across Nigeria in line with the best practice observed in other countries. You see, the conversation around transmitting the electoral result has been something that has been that have heated the political space for the past few days. And what worries Nigerians is the fact that what is wrong in having a system in place that is convenient for everybody to see how the electoral process is going on. So when excuses like we don't have the necessary infrastructure, we don't have all those excuses, when it comes up, what comes to our mind is that why don't you just put the law in place, then policies and programs that will help in shaping those laws to work effectively should come, exactly. So we need to see how we have the law first, then policies should follow to ensure that we have laws that will strengthen the process of transmitting electoral results. But if we don't have the law, so how can we go ahead and even begin to justify the fact that there is an error when these things are not transmitted? So it's important that that conversation needs to be built strongly, and every citizen has the responsibility to add their voices to that conversation. We must have a law that ensures that the electronic transmission of electoral results is mandatory in this country. So as we have always maintained, we are open to working with the relevant bodies on how to make Nigeria better for the interest of the nation. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you so much for everyone for coming.
it is a fast pace already. Well, my name is John Mokocha. I'm the managing editor of the newspaper. I'd like to start my comment or remarks by commending the doggedness of the panelists, particularly my very dear friend and brother, Comrade Ralph. You know, this your name is always difficult for me. I prefer to call you our Ralph Sanjani. Great work you have done with your team. Very huge and quite resourceful effort that has gone into it. You know, corruption perception index is a very critical aspect of social life. For you to take up such a responsibility, in addition to what you have been doing in terms of advocacy, I know that we have been in this struggle for decades, for a long time. We on this side of the table, we have been on this struggle, and we keep pushing the struggle, believing God that someday Nigeria we're going to have a better country that we call Nigeria. But looking very deep into the presentation, I am finding that the issue that has actually become so more serious in our country currently, terrorism, is seems to be missing here. And I do think that one of the greatest issues that have kept on fueling terrorism is corruption. You know, illicit flow of money or monies, you know, that has provided oxygen for terrorism activities. So that extent, I think I have to hear either from Ralph or any member of the parliament what implication really of what's the link between corruption as we are dealing with it and terrorism across the country. That's one. Then the issue of the e-transmission. I know a lot has been said, and as we speak, a lot is still going on in the National Assembly. What is the next step after the advocacy? What's the next step? Yesterday there was a protest. I don't know how many members of this parliament or this group was there. Some of us were there yesterday at the National Assembly. But what is next after the protest?
Thank you very much. I think, yeah, let me just respond to that. So I think if you look at the witness number 6, right? We talk about corruption in the security sector. So the corruption in the security sector involves also the terrorism financing, trade, kidnapping, all sorts of criminal activities happening in our country. And we allege that while these activities are intensified, it's because of the corruption in the security sector, because of the financing of terrorism. For many years, government people said that they have the names and the names of people who are sponsoring terrorism. So today, we have not seen the actual, people. So something is fishy somewhere. Some people have been doing this in, and we know, of course, terrorism is a global network. It's a problem that is not only limited to Nigeria, but other countries have made significant efforts in dealing with terrorism. You cannot go and be negotiating with people after the negotiation, the war, kill community, attack community. This is very, very unacceptable. The Nigerian government, whether formally or informally, whether at local, state, and national level, have been negotiating with the people who have been attacking innocent Nigerians. and negotiating with them has not resulted in stopping the attack. So why should they be treated like untouchable? How can Nigeria, with all resources, with all its human and financial and natural resources, will be hosted by some few people doing this thing? I think for me, the lack of the access of political will at all levels constitute the reason why this thing is growing. If you look at terrorism in Nigeria in the last 10 years, every day is increasing. Because the people have discovered that one of the quickest ways to become rich is to engage in terrorism, kidnapping, banditry, and criminality. And you call it being political. So you go and kill people, you say it's political. You go and attack people, you say because it's political, or you not bring some funny religious connotation to it. So our stand here is that we did not subscribe to all these dubious concepts of ethnic, religious, geographical, and political identity. A criminal is a criminal. Whether you are a Muslim, Christian, Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, Gwari, Ingas, Northern, Southern, whatever, wherever you find yourself, if you are a criminal, you are a criminal. You should be named with your correct name, criminal. And there should not be any debate over that. Otherwise, we will continue to make excuses to people who are taking lives of innocent Nigerians. Look at what happened to Kwara. Tell me, what is the relationship with what the people you killed there? Innocent people. In Katsina, child of the 6th year, they arrested his mother who has twins, baby twins. They arrested the boy and they were putting cigarettes on his back. On his back, cigarettes. 6-year-old. How do you go and negotiate with such kind of terrorists, such kind of athletes or ruthless people? So I think government need to get this right. If they are the ones that are interested in keeping these people, let them tell Nigerians so that Nigerians can begin to think of option. But as the way it is now, they are confusing Nigerians. You go and sit down to be negotiating with these people, the next day they go and attack people, kill people in mass. In fact, as a matter of fact, it's just that in the south, if you kill 10 persons, it's a news. In the north, if you kill 200, it's no longer a news because it's a daily affair. It's a daily happening. So, are you telling me that the people, for example, in the north, which constitutes half or more than half of the population, cannot sit down to ensure that they declare state of emergency in security problems in the north or in the Nigeria generally? I think for me, something is wrong. Some people are interested in keeping these criminals. That's just the explanation. Otherwise, why should they be taking the lives of our Nigerian police, taking the lives of our Nigerian army, taking the lives of innocent citizens, and yet the only thing that preoccupies you now is the campaign. Is 2027 retaining power or taking over power? Something is wrong. I think Nigerian political plans are total failure. If they are not failure, they should have addressed these fundamental problems which undermine the integrity of the country. Now we are being called all sorts of names because of our inability to collectively rise up to protect our country and our citizens, especially the vulnerable ones. So for me, we have spoken extensively about the security sector corruption, and we believe that the country needs to wake up. America cannot solve their security problems. Europe cannot solve their problems. No country can solve their problems. You must wake up to your responsibility. You cannot donate your responsibility to another country. Otherwise, there's consequences for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is our position with regard to the issues of terrorism. I don't know whether my colleague will add something. But with regard to the question on the electoral reform that is going on, we are civil society. We are not lawmakers. We are not government. We cannot make law. We can only advocate good laws for the business of our country and for peace and stability in Nigeria. We are doing our best through providing credible information and to see the best practice across the world and to ensure and stability of our democracy, and also to restore confidence on Nigerians who have lost hope and confidence on having a free, fair, and credible election. This is an activity that the National Assembly has to give that chance for Nigerians and the international community to see that Nigerian leaders are determined to ensure that we have free, fair, and credible election. And this year, there are some political forces in Nigeria are having that if you have a free and fair election, they will not win. It is because they are already a bad case. That is why, otherwise, if you know you are doing the right thing, you should support to have the right thing to happen. You should support to have a system that will guarantee everyone having equal opportunity and equal chance without maneuvering, without manipulation and control. It is simply because they are bad products, so they cannot sell anything. That is why they are scared and they are determined to do everything possible to corrupt the electoral law, because that is the best rigging. If you corrupt the electoral law, then you have already commenced the rigging. And that is what we want them to understand. And if they don't want the country to be calling us names, they need to do the right thing. I think that's just my little response to that. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir.
Yes.
My name is Vincent Sokushi from Quality TV. Still on the electoral law. Now, I want to ask, first of all, the civil society are doing well, but when you look at the present government, they tend not to heed to any protest, believing that they have a counter-protest to counter whatever activities that the CSOs are putting in place to ensure that these laws are being addressed before 2027. Peradventure, they did not heed to the CSO's request. What do you think, which step do you think CSOs can take to effect change, the change Nigerians demand?
Well, I mean, civil society promotes peaceful protest and peaceful rally. And civil society promotes freedom of expression and association like it is imperative in our constitution. So anything we will do, it will have to be in line with what the law permits us to do as a responsible patriotic Nigerian. And it is now left for people who are responsible to make this law, or to make the law, to do what is the aspiration of Nigerians. Nigerians say we want a better electoral law. Nigerians say we are tired of electoral fraud and corruption. Nigerians say we want the election to be credible, free, fair, so that Nigerian name and image will be improved. And if those who are responsible for making that happen, they don't want it then means that they are bad products, and therefore Nigerians need to make effort to make sure that they put them through legal means, through democratic means, so that they can have people who cares about the nation and the people. We cannot go and be fighting, we don't, civil society, we don't fight. We do constructive engagement through policy advocacy, through research, through capacity building, through awareness creation, through dialogue. That's what civil society actually organizations do. So we are not, politicians where we come to start insulting or abusing.
All right, so let me just add to what the chair has said. So I want to first of all correct the narrative that you said CSO request. So it's actually not a CSO request, it's a citizen request. So the agitation for an electoral process that is convenient, that is transparent, that is accountable, that also ensures that citizens have the right to vote and also ensure that their votes count is a collective patriotic citizens request. So what the society is doing is to amplify that voices of the people, of the citizens, so that the National Assembly should also be aware of the fact that citizens want an electoral reform process that ensures that their votes are protected, a process that ensures that their votes count, a process that also ensures that citizens have the right to bring the right kind of leadership that will ensure that democracy thrives in the country. So that is just it. It's not about civil society, it's about the citizens. Thank you.
recommendation, an area of recommendation. Though I don't know what the research is, I don't know, but I just want to add that it's important we begin to look strengthening our what we call participatory development, so that the citizens also need to play the role. You know, there are many things we need to achieve using participatory development or what we call community. The citizens must understand what we should start. Two, they must understand that they are part and parcel of the solution. Three, they must take action. And the only way we can achieve this is when we strengthen our participatory development approach. So I'm thinking that maybe when next we should find a way to have intervention. Government must design development that must be participatory. The civil society must do the same. Because if we do not raise citizens with the capacity to read the demand, good governance, at the end of the day, we are just working in silence. So I'm thinking that we should, because if this what I'm saying is not part of the research objective, it may be difficult to come into the recommendation. But in subsequent ones, we should also find a way, what I call citizen agency or community agency. They have important role because they must take part in decision making on issues affecting them, and we need to create that platform for them to take part. If we raise citizens with the capacity to do most of the work, our work will even be relatively easy because they will champion this cause while we also provide support. And this is just what I just want to. Again, let me also congratulate you for this report. I was listening to Coach Corruption, but at the end of the day, what I just said, we need to find a way back with the citizens. We need to find a way to communicate these reports. The citizens must understand the impact of this to their well-being, to their education, to their health. We need to find a way to effectively communicate this report. So I thank you people very much for this report, and I hope that for some of us will have copy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much everyone for being a part of this. The media wants to take a program, the panelists outside the building. Soft copies of the report will be sent to and so you just give us the one copy of the report. Thank you.
Isso aí.